Hi, my name is Abdul Tajar, roll number 2401323, and I am going to speak on the topic rising public debt and rising fiscal deficit and public debt in India. So, India, one of the fastest growing economies, faces a persistent challenge rising fiscal deficit and public debt. While borrowing is essential for development, excessive debt can cause inflation, high interest rates, and economic instability. The key question lies here is how much debt is too much. First, let's understand what is fiscal deficit and public debt. So, fiscal deficit is the gap between government's expenditure and revenue, excluding borrowings. It is measured as a percentage of GDP and reflects how much a country is spending beyond its means. So, talking about the formula, fiscal deficit is equals to total expenditure minus total revenue, excluding borrowings. Talking about India's fiscal deficit trends over the past years, in the 2018 to 19, it was 3.4% of GDP. In 2020 to 21, because of the COVID impact, it was 9.2% of GDP. And post COVID recovery, in last year 2023 to 24, 5.9% of GDP. Talking about public debt in India, it was 155 lakh crores, which is around 57% of GDP in 2023 to 24. So interest payments alone consume 40% of total government revenue in India. And talking about the concepts studied in the class, Keynesian economics suggests that deficit spending can stimulate growth, but prolonged deficits without strong revenues lead to inflationary pressures and economic instability. Now let's learn about its impact on economic growth and political challenges. So, how does fiscal deficit affect India? First, inflation risk. Excessive government borrowing increases money supply, raising prices. Second, higher interest rates. Public borrowing crowds out private investment. Third, currency depreciation. Lower investor confidence weakens the rupee. Fourth, debt trapped concern. Increased borrowing means future tax hikes or expenditure cuts. So, Ricardian equivalence suggests that when governments borrow, citizens anticipate future taxes and reduce spending, slowing growth. Talking about the political challenges, election oriented spending occurs, high pre election spending worsens deficits, tax collection issues, then state versus center conflict, many states struggle with fiscal discipline. So, public choice theory explains how governments prioritize short term popularity over long term economic stability. Talking about the long term solutions of this problem, how can India control its fiscal deficit? First, strengthening tax compliance. AI driven fraud detection, digital taxation can strengthen the tax compliance in India. Second, reducing non productive expenditure, rationalizing subsidies, targeting welfare schemes. Third, public private partnership, encouraging private investment in infrastructure. Fourth, debt management strategies, refinancing costly debt and diversifying borrowing sources. So, the slow growth model suggests that long term fiscal stability comes from productivity and investment, not excessive borrowing. So, finally, India's fiscal deficit isn't balancing act. It can drive growth if managed well or lead to a crisis if ignored. The challenge for policymakers is to balance fiscal responsibilities with development needs. A sustainable economy requires disciplined spending, higher revenue generation, and strategic investments. Fiscal stability is not just a government responsibility, it affects businesses, consumers, and future generation. So, this was my opinions on rising public debt and fiscal deficit in India. Thank you.